So I now have the audio and the graphics synced up. If I preview this,
I know who I am.
you can see things are happening when they're supposed to be happening. However, there's still more to this first section that I would like to do. Of course, I don't want to have the words just appear on screen like this. I would actually like to have the focus be on the word I as it comes in, so that the word I is in the center of our screen, and then as the other words come in, we pull out just a little bit, as if, for example, there were a camera. We're not using a camera. We could, but we're not going to use cameras in this tutorial. We're just going to use the graphics as they are. So what we need to do, we need to essentially group these words, all these words, I know who I am, and the other graphics that go along with it. Now the terminology that After Effects uses for grouping is pre-composing, and essentially what that is doing, it's taking our graphics and putting those into a new composition, essentially putting those into a brand new timeline that we can then manipulate and change and transform as we see fit. Now, I'll show you just an example of why this is important. For example, if I were to leave all these graphics pre-composed or ungrouped in this composition, and I wanted to, for example, change the scale of all these words, well, let's do that just for a second. I'm going to shift select all these graphics that need to be changed, all the way right down to the down here. We're not going to change the dot pattern or the background. All that will stay as it is. So for example, I would like to change the scale. Well, with all these selected, if I press S, the scale values appear for all those different graphics. And let's make them larger, for example. So I'm going to just click on one of these sliders here, where you can see with the finger with the double-sided arrow, and that'll change all the layers that are currently selected. And watch what happens. Each graphic enlarges or scales around its own anchor point, and you can see why that's a problem, because we can't control all these graphics as a group. They all get changed individually. I'm going to go Command Z to get us back to where we were. So this is why we need to pre-compose. So I'm going to hide those. I just pressed U on my keyboard. That's a way of hiding the values or the properties. And so what I need, like I say, what I need to do is I need to group them. I have all these graphics that need to be changed, selected. Now what I need to do is I need to go up to my Layers drop-down menu, and at the very bottom you can see there's something called Pre-compose. When you see Pre-compose, think of it as grouping. And I'm going to Pre-compose. And I get this dialog box. Now it's asking me something here. Now it says move all attributes into the new composition. Well, that is essentially the only option I have here. We will talk about what the other options mean at some other point. Now I'm going to rename this pre-comp 1 to I'm going to call this I know ... That'll allow me to recognize that as the first line of our dialogue, and I'm going to say OK. Now what has happened is you can see that there is now a new composition that has been created. There's our dude main that we had originally copied it for, that we had originally laid out our graphics, and now we have this new timeline. Well, why is that? Well, let's go back to dude main and see what's happened. So all those graphics that had their own layers originally have now been grouped into this new composition called I know ... And you can see too that the composition goes from the beginning of our timeline right to the end of our timeline, and that's actually just what we want, because as I scrub through the timeline, you can see things still come on when they're supposed to. But the difference now is there is just the one anchor point here, and that allows me to reveal its scale and its position. I'm going to go Shift P to reveal both the scale and the position property. And now when I go to change the scale, you can see it all moves together. So essentially we've grouped this these graphics, and I can enlarge the scale and change the position so that the eye, and let's go back in our timeline so when the eye is the only thing on there so that we can see exactly how to position this properly. I'm going to again scale that up quite a bit, and I'm going to change the position. I'm going to bring it down and bring it over to the left or to the right just a little bit so we can see exactly what is happening. In fact, I'll do this right in the comp window. That'll be a little bit clearer. Now, here's something that's very interesting, however. Look at the quality of that graphic. It's all fuzzy. Well, wasn't Illustrator supposed to be able to bring our graphics in as a clean, crisp vector graphics? That doesn't look like it's clean. Let's go to 100% and see if that cleans it up a little bit. Well, no, that makes it even messier. So we have an issue here. What is the issue? Well, Illustrator graphics can be brought in as nice clean graphics, but something has to happen to them first before we can do that. Let's go back to this I know composition, and you can see everything looks fairly clear there, but let's zoom in a little bit more and we'll see that, where is that? There we go. Look at the rasterization or the aliasing around those letters. But I want you to look down here in the timeline for a second. You'll see that there is this, looks like a little sun graphic here, and that is called our continuously rasterize button. And currently that is unselected for all these graphics. I'm going to zoom out just a little bit. Watch what happens though when I click on the sun for all these layers. In fact, I can just drag down for all those. And did you see how that cleaned that up just a little bit? I'm going to go right down to the bottom, make sure all these are set for continuously rasterized. And I'm going to zoom out just a little bit. And what that's doing, actually I'm going to go to 100%, fit to 100%. What that's doing is it's turning our graphics from being rasterized into looking like the clean vectors that they are. And this will become clear again when I go back to this section, and I'm going to click on continuously rasterize for that section. And look at that. Did you see how that cleaned that up? This is very important when working with vector graphics imported from Illustrator, that this continuously rasterized button is clicked for all the layers as well as the grouped composition as well. So now you can see that when that word I comes on screen, it's looking nice and crisp. Okay, so we have a part, right? We have the graphic coming in right at that point, and this is the scale and position that we wanted at that point. Let's put keyframes for that point right there. I'm going to click on our right here on our stopwatches, and we can see we've got keyframes positioned right where we want them when the word I comes in. And then let's go out a little bit in our timeline. The word no comes in right there. So we want to have at this point the word no on our screen. So what we're going to do is, again, we're going to reposition our scale and our position. I'm going to reduce the scale so that comes down a little bit. And I'm going to reposition that so that is in on our screen here. Now, in fact, this back and forth of changing position and scale, there is actually a quicker way of doing it, but or not a quicker way. There is perhaps a bit more an easier way, but we're just going to deal with these scale and position properties for now. So I know. So there you go. You can see how this is going to reveal itself. I know. Now we go to a few more frames, and I know who. Let's see. I know. Let's go right here. I think the word who is coming on, and we're not actually seeing it. So we're going to again reduce the scale, and again change the position. There. That's when who comes on. So I'm going to. I know who. That position needs to be positioned up just a little bit more. So at this point, actually, I'm going to take my scale and position. I'm just going to drag them out just a little bit on my timeline, and I want the position to come up here. So we say I know who, and then I comes on right there. So we need to, again, at this point, have the graphics, or the grouped graphics positioned a little bit differently. Again, I'm going to change the scale to bring that down just a little bit, and again reposition that right here. So I know who I, and right at here where am comes on, we really have to scale back quite a bit and reposition that on our screen. And I'm going to just give us a bit more room. Actually, I'm going to reduce this down to 50% so I can see this a bit more clearly. So there we go. So I know who I am. I know who I am. There we go. And that is how we're going to get that first section on there. Now there's one more thing that we need to do, and that is to make sure that this weather vane is spinning properly. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to this grouped composition, or where the I know composition, and I'm just going to select that weather vane. I'm going to reduce the size of this. Whoops, don't mean to do that. Reduce the size of our comp window. Hello. There we go. And with my weather vane selected, right where it comes on, I'm going to reveal its scale property, because the scale property is what we were going to change here. I'm going to press S, and there's our scale property. And I'm going to click the stopwatch so we can put a keyframe right at the beginning as when it comes on. And now I'm going to actually reveal, I'm going to change the slider of my timeline just so I can see a bit more of the timeline. And I'm just going to go a couple of frames into my timeline, and I'm going to change the scale property. Now I only want to change the X value here, the first number, not the Y. I don't want it squishing down. I just want it to look like it's spinning. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to click the chain link here so those values are unlinked, and I'm just going to reduce this down to about 30, and it looks like it's spinning. I'm going to go a couple more frames out, and I'm going to bring it back up to about 93, and then a couple more frames back, and this time I'm going to bring it back to negative value so it looks like it's pointing in the other direction. And then again another couple of frames, bring it back to some positive value so it looks like it's spinning around, and then again back to the point where I'm going to bring it back to almost like it's pointing in the other direction. Now let's just quickly scrub through this, and you can see how that's looking like that weather vane is spinning around in the wind, which is the effect that I'm trying to create here. And in fact, I can go out a bit more in my timeline, and I'm not, there aren't any hard and fast rules about this, of course, so I'm going to bring that back. I just want it to look like it's really spinning a lot. And we'll go right to the end. And I might even go a little bit further, as long as it's, whoops, we'll go. So now it looks like it's spinning. Now let's go back to our dude main composition and see how that is working. So I know who I, and now when that comes on, you can see that already that weather vane is spinning. Let's do a little RAM preview and see how this is working.
I know who I am. I know who I am.
Okay, actually I think that this weather vane is spinning much too quickly. Let's go back to the I know, and I'm going to do something here. I'm going to stretch out all these keyframes. I put in too many keyframes, I believe. I'm going to just move out of my timeline a little bit. Now, I could reposition each one of these keyframes individually, but I don't have to. In fact, with all these keyframes selected, I'm going to press down the Option button, and I'm just going to start dragging those out. And you can see those keyframes are moving proportionately with each other. And I'm just going to do that and check our dude main and RAM preview that again.
I know who I am. I know who I am. I know who I am.
Well, that might need some tweaking. However, you get the idea of how pre-composing or grouping of our graphics is going to help us create a much more interesting and complex animation.